an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering The Wall of Storms, chapters 7 and 8, Teacher and Student, and a Drinking Party. In these chapters, Mimi winds up running into somebody who could potentially change her entire life and the course of her family's life. And there's something weird happening at this party with Juan. He does not care for what this looks like. I gotta side with him on this. Awkward. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha. Huge thanks to Kyle for continuing to commission this. Thank you so much, Kyle. It's been a little while since the last episode covering this book, but weirdly, this book is I don't have trouble remembering what happened. Like, there are some books, like I just recently did Red Sister, and granted, it was almost a full 2 months, but that, because it's so unfamiliar, the world is harder for me to like recall. So I had to really pretty much go back and almost read. This book, I feel like I know the characters so well and what's happening that it's really easy for me to pick where I left off and not like I'm lost or anything like that. I've been noting that because this hasn't been commissioned quite as consistently as the first book, but it really hasn't seemed to matter too much in terms of my comprehension. So let's get started with chapter 7 because that one is this is something that I feel okay. Let's just it. Ken Leo was a soloist, right? Like we just talk about it and what's up. Because he seems really over the exploitation of the working class and the lack of opportunities, like available to the poor, and generally is unimpressed with like the workings of the world as it exists in a way that it's evident. Of course, don't get me wrong, with the way things have been written the first book, but this is the first time that we have had a character who is poor that we consistently see in their point of view while they just live an ordinary life. I had been talking about there being like lower class people in previous books as far as like the two brothers that split up and go each a different leader. But that is really not a comparison anymore because they both go on to war and they travel and there's a certain amount of position given to them. This is the first time that we've been hanging out with a family really for a consistent amount of time that really does not have anything. And I'm sure, 100% sure, that the reason it's the first time we're doing this is because this time of peace. And that's not the story that he was trying to tell before. It wouldn't have been out of place to have a family story that we watched unfold during a time of war to see how these ordinary people were affected. Really would not have been compelling in comparison to everything else that's going on. We want to watch the workings of the activities. We're not interested in. But what I find fascinating about this is that wartime, it's not like they were unaffected by it. They absolutely loved everybody, right? Excuse me. Excuse me, goodness, note to suck that out. But yeah, she lost a father, she lost two brothers, and because there's a temptation, think that unless you are a higher class, the war is going to affect you less because the people who are on them don't get shitted around quite much as people on the top who are being given new like principalities and whatever. But the truth is that the people on the bottom are always going to suffer the most because they're the ones that are actually going to war, because they're the ones that have a choice. And so starting off seeing how they are also struggling so much because they they don't have other family to rely on to make ends meet. It's really a thing in a way, like how hard Mimi has to work. And I'm going to read the opening of this. So Aki helped me get off the bed and gave a crutch she made out of driftwood. She did not tell Mimi how unlikely it was she would regain command of her leg. She simply expected her to figure out a way to do so. And Mimi gradually does better and better using this crutch and learn to walk with it. And there's some real there's a point later, and we'll get to it, but she is cooking and she's standing like a stool in order to do it, and it's not a safe thing to be doing because she's so little. But there's a line that's something like when you're poor and you're small, you just fucking do shit because it needs to done. You don't get well, that's not really safe. And that is something that for me was part of what caught my attention time around as far as being like, are you socialist? I bet you are. Because the very short side tangent, I swear it's short, but talk a lot in this area about people wanting deregulation. It's something that's like touted as a desirable state of things by conservatives. And I always have to think to what was like in the Industrial Revolution before we had put regulations and things. And this is what it was like. Literally had child labor because we were just like, well, we're poor. We have a kid that can work, in a factory. We are going to exploit that because we can't live. So we need the money. And sure, the kid might lose a hand. And sure, he might be poisoned by having his fingers like mercury building thermometers. What can we do? And that people don't want to talk about when you bring regulation. They try and say, oh, well, we'd never go back to that. Exactly. Why wouldn't we? Because we have seen what corporations are stoop to even with regulation. And the idea that there is some sort of like moral floor to their behavior that they wouldn't pass to make more money is so amusing to me. It has never been ever in the history of civilization shown to be true that anyone is willing to hold themselves to a moral standard to avoid, like, if that costs some money, like it's not, never ever has that been true. And there is absolutely no why it would be true now. We like to think that we have like grown more civilized or something, and that sort of thing is simply would not be even on someone's mind. But oh my God, of course would. If we are willing to pay people, cents an hour as they're in prison, or cents an hour because in China, we would have absolutely no problem with 7-year-old one that comes into work and getting away with that because they're making jobs, whatever. So anyway, back to this. She is walking the beach and she comes across some unusual stuff on the ground. It's remnants of a spar and heads were not wood, but some material closer to bone ivory, carved with intricate designs of an unknown beast. A long tail, 2 feet, a pair of great wings, and a slender snake-like neck topped an oversized deer-like antlered head. Aki wreckage to the clan headman. The elder could not recall ever seeing anything like it. It's not from the Emperor's expedition, said Aki, and she made no more mention of it. So I feel Aki being so focused on the expedition thing and wanting some evidence that her husband is still alive. Totally understandable. But this is pretty cool. Like, I wish that they had gotten more money of it because it says that just, a, what do you call it? Kind of a couple of coppers that they get for it. And I if they had gone into the city more and presented this, it would have gotten them more money. But maybe they also would have just got ripped off. I don't. Kyle says, hey, what's on the cover again? Oh, I don't know. Let me go back and look. Oh, is that a deer? That looked like a deer head, but I guess that's what they said. Huh. All right. I see you. I see you, Kyle. Yeah, I love the way that this sort of like recurring, I don't know if the word is leitmotif because that's too much. This is something said over and over again, though. The strange wreckage seemed to Mimi to be holes in the veil, the truth of the world, but she could not understand what she was seeing. So the veil over the world is something that gets mentioned in this chapter several more times, and it becomes more opaque or transparent depending on how Mimi is feeling about her understanding of things. And I assume that she feels that this wreckage is connected to what happened to her that night, but I'm not sure. I guess we'll see. So, yeah, but Mimi drove the strange beast long out in her dreams. The beast fought the storm turtle and the gale shark and the squall falcon, while lightning froze their poses momentarily, creating staccato chiaroscuro. Am I saying that right? Scenes as spare and beautiful as were terrifying. She hoped that the turtle managed to save that dream, just as she hoped that the gods had spared her father and others. So this is all again 5 years before New Empire that we're reading about now. We then find out that Zana is over, that there is a new king, that and is the hegemon that they're hearing about this first time. It was said that the Khan had butchered the sons of Zana at Wolf's Paw, including all the young men from the village who had gone to fight for Marshal Marana. Like again, this is this author pointing out the hegemon is killing all of his enemies and feeling like it's just a price of war. But we get to see that a village full of people all lost, every male member, all of them, every single one. Phase, people waited outside the door of the magistrate's home for news of their sons and husbands, fathers and brothers, but the doors remained shut as the magistrate convened with his advisors and clerks on how to properly conduct himself to curry favor with the head so as to keep wearing the official's dark hat. The lives of the dead soldiers, not even an afterthought. Guys. Sometimes Mimi woke up in the middle of the night. She saw her mother on the floor next to her bed, her shoulder heaving, her face turned away. Mimi would put a hand out and touch her mother's back. They would stay connected like that in silence until they fell asleep again. Yeah. That is something that I find so sad and part of, I'm not interested in having children, but I definitely had a moment of thinking the other night about times where my mother was really upset about something and trying to hide from me that she was upset. And of course I could still tell people. I don't know if I am more receptive than most children, but I don't think I was more perceptive. I think that it's underestimate what we can pick up on. And it is, if we're to have a child and to keep my emotions in check for their sake, I feel like that would be exhausting. And I don't know if I do it, So eventually the people left Magistrate's courtyard and went back to their endless toil, which turned sweat into food and pain into drink. Private shrines to the dead and presumed dead were erected in their houses, but made passionate speeches about the honor of Zana, or spoke of vengeance the hegemon. The people were too numb by sorrow to feel hatred. Wars were personal to the great lords, who could say for sure that the hegemon bore more responsibilities, deaths than the marshal or Emperor Irishi. So I like that sort of realize that, like, you know, he's the one who killed technically. Also, he not really to blame because the motherfucker put our people in the line of fire and kind of really on them. And that's kind of elevated to be on, like, thinking that way. So then we have the arrival of Kuni. And there are laws. There's like abolish the old harsh laws of that had meted out punishment, even sneezing too loudly. Now listen, guys, I'm not going to you. I have talked on other podcasts about sneezing too loudly and how much that makes me angry. I'm not gonna apologize for that. Punishments for it, fines. I'm not against it. I'm not like listen. I am somebody who is easily startled. And I'll be sitting in total silence next to him on the couch reading, and he'll just practically explode beside me by no warning. And you can't tell me that you don't have control over that. I'm sorry. People keep telling me I can't help it. Fuck you. Yes, you can. You are a liar. You are a liar. Stop it. It's obnoxious. I sneeze and I manage to pull off to the side and do the sneeze and then come back, and we're all just back to our normal. This is not what happens when Owen sneezes. It's like the front of his face comes off. So, I'm just saying, let it be known. I might be a dictator. He let it be known that men of the other islands who had been displaced by the wars would come to his island, and he would help them get settled with free seeds and tools. The elders and wizards of Dasu rejoiced. The wars had drained the island of men, and husbands and fathers were in short supply. Though some women agreed to marry into existing households, especially if families were wealthy, not wanted such an arrangement. It was also customary for women in love or in need of each other to join in Rapa marriages. This was said to have once fallen in love with an eye maiden. And I really like this. This is mentioned, when there is a shortage of men, it is made more acceptable for women to love one another and support one another. And I would be interested to hear how supportive it was of these marriages continuing after things begin to get back to normal. With the war, the number of Rapa marriages grown so that women could support each other. It was easier to till the fields and to raise children together. Still, there were many women who preferred men and did not want to share, and strangers were indeed welcome. Aki, who was asked but never agreed to bind herself in a marriage, paid no attention to any men who came to settle in the village, though several seemed interested in her. And time anybody asks, she say, "My husband's away, but he'll be back." And in some ways, I feel frustrated by that, and in other ways, I feel like I believe that they're still alive for some reasons, and so I kind of am on her side with this, even though it feels irrational and short-sighted. So let me jump ahead a little bit, and Mimi is asking her if we have talent, and her mother's like, "Why are you asking this?" And it turns out that King Kuni is looking for people with talent and to reward them. Mimi repeated the message to her mother word for word. It ended with, "An oyster clasped in the branches of the most exquisite head of coral is as likely to hold a pole as one mired in it." And her mother looks at her and thinks, well, she is pretty extraordinary. It might be great for us if the king took an interest in her. And then she remembers that her husband's talent is precisely what got him roped into the mission that probably cost him his life. And she says, talent is like a pretty in the tail of a peacock daughter. It brings joy to the powerful, but only sorrow to the bird. Mimi pondered this. The veil over the world seemed to grow even thicker. So the thing about she's saying is that it's not really untrue. It's a hard thing, especially like, I feel like millennials have had the hardest time with this, because most of us being children boomers, we were raised being told you could be anything you wanted. And we were raised on movies and books about having a talent and being able to rise above because it, and being good at something, taking you out of a bad situation, and being rewarded for work. And as we out into the world, and economy began to sink, we realized that like talent really is meaningless after a point, because when employers can get away with paying you nothing, whether you want or not, you're going to same nothing as everybody else. And I have managed to carve out a really niche like job that my talent is is the primary focus of work and is rewarded. I am a huge outside chance. Like what I'm doing is honestly a lot of luck. And I have been in a position where I was able to be supported by somebody who believed in me until I got my feet under me. And a lot of people don't get that, So I feel like that really resonated with me. Unfortunately, if you are good at things, you are alive in a world where there is not a lot of regulation on how you're treated and how employers can treat you, then you can be exploited so easily. And the talent that you have is going to be a bit of a burden in some ways, if anything. Like it's sort of, use worked in retail or in like service, they know that if you wind up being too competent at your job, if you are on top of things consistently and get shit done, show up consistently, and you're not calling out, and honestly, as much as it sounds like that's just doing your job, that is a talent. Being competent and being able to like problem solve and whatnot, that is a talent. If you are able to do that, you will be given more work, but you will almost never be given a raise. You'll be given a new title. I'll be night supervisor, but I won't get a raise. This is an actual happened. So as like, I feel bad that she's sort of sitting on her daughter's talent. She's also worried about her fucking safety and her life, which is really understandable. It has been burned 3 times now. Like, So Kuni rebelled against the hegemon. And it says, once again, the men and women also this time of Dasu, the fields and fish boats, die in distant lands. Aki wasn't surprised. The dreams of the great lords of the world were built upon the blood bones of the common people. The blossom of the golden chrysanthemum acquired the fertilizer from the ashes of the 100 flowers. That was an eternal truth. Peace did not come again until me had turned 13, when King Kuni became Emperor Ragan, initiating the reign of four Placides. So, yeah, I felt for her in this. Like, honestly, it's a pretty quick summation of things, but I wanted to go step by step because how it's brutal, So Mimi to the market. She comes across, first of all, on the way in, there are a bunch of like sort of learned men, bureaucrats, upper middle class people who drive right through the crowd and expect everybody to move aside. They will literally shove you and you if you don't get out of the way quickly enough. If Mimi's got a fucking crutch, so it is difficult for her. And Mimi is angry, but trying to swallow that and fears that, this is how the world is, and I just need to get used to. Fortunately, is how you have to cope with injustice, is learning to swallow anger. Because if you let yourself angry every time to the level that you want to be, you will exhaust yourself. And as she gets to the marketplace, she thinks that there's this whole crowd that's gathered around, and she's figuring that maybe there's a show or somebody singing, doing acrobatics. But no, it's just two men who are sitting and talking to each other. And I'm not going to go through the argument, but it's two scholars arguing about the size of the sun changing in the sky throughout the day, and whether or not that is responsible for it being warmer at certain times of day than others. And generally using a lot of quotes from sages, of sort of circular logic, a lot of theorizing without actually supporting any of their claims or assertions with actual fact. It's all being said as if they're taking for granted that's true. But they're not researching. They're not using a scientific method. They're, like taught their ass, essentially. And finally, they wind up like getting up and going away. And she continues to sit there and thinks out like the fact that they are living such leisurely lives. They can literally just bullshit. And that's apparently their whole job is to just dick around talking this and not have to constantly worry about weather and fishing and whether or not the harvest is going to be good. They don't have to worry about day-to-day living stuff. And so they get to bullshit in front of people, like have an audience, and that is their life. And if you are somebody who struggled in life, you know that feeling well. Getting to watch what some people do as a job, because they managed to get really, really lucky. And I'm looking at myself here, I will admit this. Or watching people who go on vacations. That's one that always gets me, because vacations are something that are really tricky for me. It's only in the past couple of years that I've actually been able to take them. And the first real vacation I went on, the one that all of my listeners fundraised for me, that is the first real vacation I took in like 5-6 years. Mostly, anytime I've taken one, it was only 2 or 3 days, which for me, it's tough to even think of that vacation. I feel like a week is really what you should think of. And 2, 3 days, that long weekend. But when I will see people like in these amazing trips places, and I wonder what it's like to be able to afford to do that, to be able to put money towards all of this non-crucial to life stuff, and it's hard not to get resentful times and to feel like, why is that fair? And it's just natural. And I really love that we're seeing Mimi wrestling this, and trying to understand why the world is set up this way, because it's not right. And me would agree with her that it's not right. But at the same time, he's doing his best. We know that, to try and level things out for people and make easier poor. But other people are not going to respond well, being like made equal with what they see as their lessers. So that's also a sort of a block that he probably has to deal with, is the elevation of commoners is very practical and smart if they have talent, like he's doing what's right. But I wonder if some of the people who watch others being elevated don't feel like they're getting above their station, and, you know, sort of acting like they're better than they should. So eventually this old man comes up to her. Well, he's not old. I'm saying that like he's like, you know, 80. It says he was in his late 40s with gray hair that he tied up carelessly in a loose bun, and his skin was as dark as the shells of the great sea turtles. Those scars on his face marred his otherwise handsome features. His green eyes were friendly and warm in the light of the setting sun. He seemed fascinated by that debate, the man said, an interested expression on his face. What were you thinking just now? Still a bit unsettled, Mimi said, Why do so many sisters have family names end in G? And he was really surprised and then laughs. And she gets embarrassed and kind of pissed, like he's making fun of her, and she just to get her stuff and walk away. And he apologizes and is like, I'm not trying to offend you. I really was surprised because that was so not what I expected to hear. And then explains that the ways that their names end, it's not a part of a family name. It's a suffix that is meant to indicate respect and mean to her. And when he says that it's classical ano, she cries and is like, you know, classical ano. And he talks about knowing that and knowing like mathematics, mechanics, and whatnot. And he never stops studying because he's surprised that at a man his age, like still at school, is the way that she thinks of it. And she asks if he understands the gods. He's like, well, I don't. I think they don't even understand themselves, to be honest, and that they are also learning. This was just a strange idea. Mimi was at a loss for words, which I love. You know, that was a really interesting answer. At this point, reader doesn't know for sure who this guy. I don't know if y'all knew when you were reading it who this was, but I definitely did not. I know that, you know, is described in such a way that if you pay particular attention to how people look, that's an unusual enough combination of features that may be able to figure it out. But I don't really remember the physical descriptions of most of these characters. I have to be honest. So he talks about how he came from old Han, where the kids had knew how to read, and he's hoping like because we're in a time of peace, maybe we'll get back to that. And she's just sort of like doesn't comment because she feels like rude to be like, yeah, right, but she lets it go. And he asks, what did you think of the debate? And she says, I think they need to weigh the fish. And he looks confused, like, what does that mean? And just, my mom used to ask whether I knew why whitefish became heavier over time as you come out of the sea. And the guy starts to theorize about whether or not that, like, there is, you know, some sort of gas bellies that like, just all these things that could cause something like that to be true. And it goes on for about a paragraph, and she interrupts and is like, yeah, so see that this is the thing. I did, which is assume that what she told me was true. But what you should do is weigh fish. And you know, that's not true at all. Whitefish doesn't get heavier over time. That was just a story merchant made up. And made by unscrupulous merchants who blew air into the belly of their fish to make them seem bigger. And when their fish turned out to weigh less than other fish of the same size, argued that their catch was fresh, was why they weighed less. Which is just so amazingly backward. You guys are shit motherfuckers. So what this comes down to is her being like they're arguing about the size of the sun, but that's not even necessarily true. And we find out later enough when she you know, takes the measurement with this like contraption that created. It's not bigger any time of day. It's an illusion. It looks bigger at the horizon, but not. And she has this thing that she made with a mirror in order to, like, the whole thing is honestly confusing for me to picture, and I can't. But whatever it is, Toru, which is what he calls him, is impressed with it and the way that this is put together. She says, I always like to look at things in nature. The sun is too bright to look at directly, so I figured out this way of looking at a reflection. And so they take measurements throughout the day, and sure enough, proves that these two assholes had no idea what they were talking about. So they go into the city to sell some grain as a sample bag, and she intends to go to the regular market, and he says that they should go to the royal palace, and she's like, they have the worst prices. Why would I do that? And he's like, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at the price you get. So they head in, and we run across Kado, which turned out to be Kuni's older brother. And let's see, named him as King of Desu. But everyone knew it was just a symbolic gesture. And King Kado stayed and reconstructed upon the Harmonicity most of the time, leaving his kingdom to be run by the emperor's bureaucrats, like provinces administered directly by the emperor. The royal palace used to be King Kuni's palace, and before that it was the governor's mansion under the Zhou Empire. It was much bigger than the other houses in Bay, as the city was never a great metropolis like the big cities in the island. An acquisitions clerk sat in the yard of the palace, bored out of his mind. And Ragan had a reputation of being frugal, and King Kado's regent had given orders to keep the prices offered for grain low. Only pests with the lowest quality grains, ones that they can sell to private merchants, came to try their luck with the government. The acquisition clerk had only one vendor approach him all day yesterday. He expected today to be the same. So these two come in, and immediately he's like, oh shit, some people here. What's up? He's like, oh man, they must have really bad grain if they're going to come up here and try their luck. But then he recognizes the guy that we know as Toru, and he's like, oh my god, this dude has been literally hanging out with the emperor. I've him a few places, and says, grins, Imperial, and he says the man is supposed to have refused all titles. How am I supposed to bless him? And the guy is saying, I'm Toru no Kiki. You don't have to call me by a title. It's fine. And the clerk is like shocked at the way that this guy has come in with this common girl, just has some grain, and is like, doing something that so again common. And he starts to offer crazy prices for this grain. How about me per bushel? Mimi is already like, whoa, really? But he thinks her being amazed. It's her being amazed that he's lowballing her so bad, because he's in front of this really important dude. And so eventually he winds up going up to 80 per bushel. And the guy, like, Mimi just walks out of there. Toru tries to say good negotiation, and Mimi's like, I'm not an idiot. He knows you. Who are you? What the fuck was that? And Toru is like, look, I don't really want to get into that, because we can talk as equals. And if I tell you everything about me, it's gonna change. So can I just not tell you? And she's all right, fine. And one of the things I really love is Mimi, when she realizes those two guys who were debating, no idea what they were talking about. She's just disappointed because she found the debate be so interesting. And I really like that. There's a combination of just like wanting to be entranced by the streets of the world, especially when you're young, but also like being disappointed that who look like they know what they're talking about are full of shit. There's nothing quite as frightening as the moments in your life where you realize that people who have been entrusted to run stuff are completely unfamiliar with the concept, like facts and numbers and research and whatever. And she is like walking back with him, and he says something about how she has raw talent, but you have to cultivate it. And she repeat back what her mother says, but kind of like basically says, she says the poor have one path in this world and the powerful are fuller. And he talks about Queen Jin and how she was a street urchin, and now she's literally a queen, and she's like the Marshal of Dara, and she's in charge of such stuff. And when Mimi shoots back, yeah, but that was during war. He's like, because her talent align a lot with war, but plenty of talent don't. They align with peace and works too. And at this point, Mimi is thinking that she had never been the type jealous of kids that had an education before. But the more she talks to this guy, the more she's like craving being put in a where her mind is tested, or even some sort of challenge mentally, you know. And she kneels for him and asks him if he'll be her teacher. And he stepped to the side in order to avoid acting right away. And says, the road you asked me to lead you on, winding and rugged, and requires knowing when to delay the truth and how to craft it is more pleasing to people ears. These are not skills I possess in abundance either. I can enlarge your vision and show you how to pick out the patterns hidden around you, but there are patterns of power that I cannot teach you to read. And she asks if that's the reason why he's out there wandering around like a commoner. And he stops and thinks about it and is kind of like, yeah, maybe it is. And decide by her pointing out, it's maybe a message that he is meant to help her. So he decides that he's going to accept her as his student. And he says, but we'll be teaching one another. And he says, Toronoki is a name given to by some friends. My true name is Luan, of Zion clan of Han. And she realizes precisely who he is. And he calls her Tika, which, if you guys remember, Tika is the suffix for somebody's child. And she is really like overwhelmed at the fact he addressed her that way. And she's, I've always been me. And earlier he had said she was like, oh, but you're afraid to be my teacher and get in the mud, find this pearl. It says that he admires the fact that she has fiery spirit, but that she does need to learn to calm that down. And when he says, I'm going to come up with a name for you, he eventually chooses Zomi, which means pearl of fire, which is beautiful. And I love it so much. So that end of her chapter, and I am very fascinated to see what he teaches her. So let's go on to chapter 8, which is the one that is sort of uncomfortable. I really love the way that this is written, because I don't know if y'all have ever been to a party like has, and you know, I'm not talking about grand political machinations, but just like a party where there is a suspicion that there is something going on between two of the people maybe shouldn't be, or there is a growing rivalry between a couple of people that we have noticed that they are like getting more snappish at each other. Or generally that somebody has been invited that we know somebody else doesn't really like, and we didn't expect them to come, but here they are. And you have these moments throughout this chapter of the sort of like the hub and the atmosphere of the party growing still and strange and uncomfortable, and just feeling the feeling of things being seen between two people. So let's see. Celebration of the 100th day after the birth of the son of Munkakri was a wild and unorthodox affair. Not only had General Kakri invited everyone from within 3 blocks of his mansion, but the general had personally wrestled 5 pigs in a mud pen for the entertainment of all his guests, which is super duper fun. I don't remember if I met Munkakri before. He was not ringing a bell for me, but it doesn't really matter in the context of this chapter anyway. So we have the gathering. Just goes out there, their wrapped towel after showering because all of the people that he's about to hang out with now are his closest friends that he was like in war with. And he walked out like a towel with the baby in his arms, and everybody wants to see the baby and hold him and everything. And there's a whole thing with everybody throwing the babies in the Puma Yemu is here, when you remember. And he's the one who throws the baby up. And everybody at first is like, what the fuck? And then he catches it. It's like, see, he likes it. My kids love this. And that's the first time they actually see the baby laugh, which really fun. There's a lot going back and forth with the baby as like the icebreaker. Things seem, what's the word? They seem jovial, right? And that's the baby's name, and it turned out that essentially they named the kid Pig Bristles, and Moon is like a little embarrassed by it, but he also is like, I feel like it's a section of the pig. I want him to remember roots, and Naro said it was okay. So they start talking about, like, they're not talking about anything specific, just kind of like joking around about having a long-lasting romance that manages to carry on through time and through the ups and downs of marriage. And one of the things, like, it's Koyelu says, Naru and Moon certainly know the secret of long-lasting romance. You would compare favorably to the and moth of old, weary, wakeful weeks, as the poets would say. And everyone stops and stares at it. And he's like, what? What's the problem? And one of them, Duke is like, why do you call him weak and insult him like that? And Coco's like, what do you mean? That's not what I said. And Lua is here at this party. Like, no, the part of a story. And he says that there was, a kid who was in love with someone. Kiidi was so enamored of his lover, a man by the name of Mathata, and I really thought this was interesting. He had a male lover, and this seems to be totally acceptable here, which thumbs up. I'm happy to hear it. Edie ordered his courtier to carry the bed with him and Mathata into the audience hall so as to avoid waking up his lover. The poets of Amu used the phrase wakeful weakness as a ken for romantic love. What's a ken? Asked Moon. It's a poetic. Kogo just meant to pay compliment to your affection to each other. That's all. Moon looked pleased, and Theka embarrassed apologized to Kogo. But Jin Mazati spoke up. Have you so much time in college advocates in the grand examination hall that you've forgotten how to talk to your old comrades, Kogo? Luan was surprised by the harshness of Jin's tone, but she refused to meet his eyes. It's quite a question, Jin, said Kogo. But the rather cold expression of the generals made it clear that Jin was saying something all thought. We know swords and horses, says Jin. But even if you put Munuma and Than and Theka and me all together, you wouldn't find more than half in our heads. So we'd appreciate it if you stick to drinking tea and spewing ink every chance you get. I sincerely apologize, Jin, said a humble Kogo. I have, as you say, been spending time with the bookish and arrogant, and not nearly enough time with old friends. Jin nodded, said no more. Luan tried to relieve the suddenly ill atmosphere in the room. Y'all, this fucked me up. Like, we are living in an age right now that is kind of anti-intellectual, where being somebody who is able to things or cite research is dismissed as being elitist. What they're actually pointing to and saying is not focused on at all. Merely the way that they are floating their liberal education is the thing that gets focused on. And Jin, we like hearing a chat between Kogo and Luan later, where Kogo's like, Jin's trying to act like, or I think it was Luan who says Jin's trying to act like she wasn't educated. And she spent tons of time educating herself, reading. She knew what we were referencing. Why did she act like that? And Kogo is the one, actually, despite her coming up against him, that kind of deter and is like she's trying to play to the people who support her, who are soldiers. She knows that that's her base, and that they probably felt left out by the reference and conversation. She wanted to prove to them that she was going to have their back and make sure that like the conversation remained in a straw that they could understand, and to shame me rather than shame them, insinuating that they just know, she would make it seem like I was overdoing it, and it's a better way to play it. And I'm not really even like mad at her for that, because she's concerned obviously about where she stands, because she is a Martian and we're in a time of peace. And there's a feeling, as we see among a lot of people here, not knowing what they are meant to do now, because the whole reason that they reached the pinnacles that they have was due to being involved in a conflict that is now over. And is, I don't know, there's a lot of little things here that I found really like sad that they want being sticking places. Moon calls himself a prickly pear. When they're playing this game of Fool's Mirror, where they choose like a plant that describes them. And Naru says, I'm the glory whose vine has found the support of my one true sturdy oak. And it's really sweet, actually. This guy who's saying that he is the vine and his wife's the oak. Luan locked gazes for a moment, and Luan felt his face grow warm, but Jin's face was unreadable. So here comes Miemu, and says, I'm the jumping bean. I look no different from ordinary bushes in the wild, but when grazing animals come near, 1,000 beans step into action and make a noise that would frighten away an elephant. And I don't know, and who is it? Oh yeah. Lady P says, I think a lovely comparison. It paints such a vivid picture. And Jin says, it's very apt. Surprise rating tactic be taught to every soldier of Ara. Luan sipped his tea happily, but he was struck by the oddness of the moment. Given that Moon and Naro were hosts, ordinarily they should have been ones to give the definitive opinion of a participant's comparison. However, since Naro wasn't an official and Moon was making speeches, it naturally fell to Kogo and Jin, the two highest-ranking officials present, to play the role. Yet Jin apparently assumed she was the one in charge without even consulting Kogo. And Kogo, for his, does not protest, because he seems to have read the room and realized he is not anybody wants to hear from right now. So then goes and says, I was once the nice blooming cis. I served emperor in the dark. Now I'm more like the undergrowth in a forest of tall trees. And everybody's what? And he said, I get to enjoy shade while the rest of you are exposed to the fiery and punishing rain. I've been lucky, I know that. I haven't had to risk my life or work as hard as the rest of you, and I'm thankful to be among your company. And Jin says, a gracious comparison, but not apt. You're a member of the House of Dandelion as much as the rest of us. You must drink. And Rin is happy about this. And Lua noticing that Rin is trying to get a compliment here, not because he's sort of trying to curry favor, but because he seems genuinely insecure and wants to be reassured by Jin. And this is a bit of a pattern. Again, we have Luan mentioning that he's an anemone and that he's alone. And Jin asks prefer to have no attachment. And he just says, I prefer to live life independent of the nurse judgment. And she just stares at him and then nods and drinks. And he wonders what exactly she's really asking there. And I'm like, you know what she's asking. Come on, dude, you know. So then comes Thekokimo. And Thekokimo was the one who apparently was in charge of making weapons. These days, I suppose feel like that old apple tree in the courtyard that no longer bears fruit. My use, if any, is to be chopped down for firewood. And he looks over at her thinking that she's going to brand him. Because as far as he's concerned, those words are, quote, near treasonous, which I don't really see that. I don't know why he feels like near treasonous, but Jin they all have looks of sympathy. And Jin, I won't agree with that. That old apple tree was here before Moon built the house. It will be here probably after the house is gone. Your loyalty is written in your scars are more or less lasting than any wax logogram. The Emperor has not forgotten your service or the need for sword and armor to defend this precious piece. It will not be chopped down as long as I'm the Marshal of Dar. And Luan, at this point, closes his eyes and is like, what are you doing, Jin? And Ska bows, but then says, you heard rumors of the Empress acting against hereditary nobles. Several barons have had their fiefs confiscated on pretextual charges of treason and disobedience. And he's in the middle of saying this when it is announced that the imperial consort Risana has arrived. So the fact that Risana is the one that's in makes it clear that it's not going to be her that they're concerned about. It's the other wife. And there's something here I want to point out. It's if I had come into this book about the establishment of these character previous book, find out that the conflict that was going to be simmering was between Kuni's wives. I would have been frustrated because oh wow, women pitted against each other and it's just sort of like, well, what else is new? But because this book has established them as real people, and because they're fighting for like power, they're not fighting over a man. Power they're fighting for is genuine real power. Like, this is no fucking joke. It feels definitely different to me, and I am interested. It's a shame too. I rather like both of them. Gia, I prefer because I knew her first, and she is after my own heart, way that she thinks. A lot of the time, she's very tactical. And Risana, I like because of her forthrightness and the way that she sees things differently. But I am gonna be keeping an eye on. And Risana is like, dancing around, saying hi to everybody. Knows all of their names and their family's names and everything. And Luan, it feels like he needs to keep his distance from her. And Risana points out that she can see from Luan, because she's able to sense things, that he has found another puzzle. And he took out a small piece of irregularly shaped white material. What do you think this is? I remember seeing something else a long time ago when we were in Asu. It washed on shore, didn't it? I've been collecting pieces like this, though I can't be sure of their origin. Every confirmed sightings suggest that they are found northern shores of the islands. I think they're mystery north worth investigating. It's part of the reason I've come to the capital to speak to the emperor. So, yeah, that was I didn't even put together that he was the one that had been buying up these pieces, but I'm so curious what he thinks is going on here. So she winds up doing this dance song, and this fucking lyrics of this song is so like she's planting the seeds, guys. Will heroes be gotten? Will faith be rewarded? Talking about growing old, but our hearts remain steady and the same and whatever. It's a lot. And a lot of people in the room crying and obviously feel this in their bones. So Luan waits to leave with Coco and is like, dude, is shit bad as it seems like this whole thing? And Coco like, well, maybe not. Said the consort, Sana fears the Empress because she cannot tell what the Empress wants. It's the same with the rest of us. It's done much to promote the careers of scholars and bureaucrats, but whether that's just part of the Emperor's shift from a time of war to a time of peace, or a lot of her own design, no one knows. And then they talk about Jin, the way that she's like pandering to her base, basically. And she's super loyal to Rosanna because they were on the road for war. Rosanna was the one that's with them, and she became friends with her. So she has a particular kinship and bond with her, and is going to be on her side in whatever's to happen. Does the Emperor's absence indicate his for the Empress? Because they're knowing the fact that like you know, Kuni didn't arrive. He didn't come, and his wife didn't come. The Emperor said to Nun Rosanna's council more of late. He visits her often. Said he relies on her judgment of care. Yet the Empress is not disfavored. She simply exercises her influence a different way. So who knows? And apparently Gia has some ladies in waiting. That girls that she rests in the streets. And those women are really smart. They are resourceful. And they are fucking deadly loyal Gia for saving them. So it's like everybody's been along, but they also don't. And Coco seems to be at peace with this. And Luan's like, well, Kuni always liked for there to be a little bit of like pushback. He wants everybody to think the same because he doesn't learn anything that way. But, you know, it's just like, we'll see. We'll see how much we can sustain this. By the time Rosanna's retinue had packed everything, everyone was too tired to realize that two members were missing. In the courtyard, Naro kept a garden and a cottage. Two individuals dressed in the attire of Rosanna's dances here now. And there is a woman who is super beautiful, and a dude who's like very stocky, and they are God, Lutho, and I forgot her name. Which one is she? And discussing what is going down and whether or not they can, you know, whether or not the people they have been sort of inspiring are going to, or no, this isn't Lutho. I mean, it is Lutho. Sorry. I can't find the woman's name though. Oh, it's Tutuja. Thank you, Kai. But they're talking about what's coming and the peace, whether or not it's maintainable. And they feel like the war is over and should kind of be hands off. They can't help but continue to care about those that they've took interest in. And it says the two gods watched the ghostly car in the tank as those seeking future in the murky dark sea. And that is the end of the chapter. So I'm over time and I have to go. But yeah, I'm a little bit weak, to be honest, because of the way things are going. I'm also very interested. So, all right. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you again to Kyle for commissioning this and for hanging out with me. And I will be seeing you guys soon. I think there's another one coming up in a couple weeks with episodes. So until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
was an Unspoiled Network podcast.